Good day, everybody, and welcome to another exciting unscripted episode of the Michael and Patty Show. Today, it's a very rainy day on the Charlottetown waterfront, looking out at the yacht club. It looks like many of these sailors have already removed their yachts from the water. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, Michael.
It's nice to have you along.
Yes, it's kind of nice when you're just saying about it being a rainy day. It's kind of sweater weather now, and I like the fall colors.
Captain Highlighter weather.
Sure.
It's interesting. Patty has been nosing around in the stats for the podcast, which I never do because I'm not really into looking at stats, whether it be the podcast or YouTube. And she's discovered that our podcast is now being downloaded into the triple digits, which is very impressive, over 100. I think it was 101, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've actually got a couple thousand now downloads, which is nice to know that there's that many people interested in Prince Edward Island and real estate.
And what did you find when you looked at the countries?
So we're our most concentrated area of listeners is along the east coast of Canada and the U.S. Canada and the U.S., basically across the country, we've got a fair amount. But I was impressed to see we actually cover the entire planet. There are people in India, people in Australia, people all over in Switzerland that are all listening in to our conversations.
Well, that's awesome, and thanks very much for listening. It's good to see that this silly little thing that we threw together some morning has actually turned into more than just two listeners, that being Patty and myself.
Yes.
Let's get on with some topics here. Moving along. I find in every real estate market, regardless whether it's PEI or Los Angeles or somewhere in Florida, that the real estate licenses go through the roof on a quantitative basis relative to how good the market is. In other words, the better the market, the more that's happening, the quicker prices are going up, and the more liquid real estate becomes. Everybody and their brother goes out and gets their real estate license. PEI is no exception to that. We've gone from approximately 100 agents back in 2016 to about 500 in 2024, which is fine. It's great. I think it's a wonderful way to make money. It's a super way to serve the public and hopefully do a good job doing that. But what I am finding is you do have certain brokerages that look at agents as dollar signs. So the way the real estate business typically works is a percentage of the commission goes to the broker. So the broker, a lot of them are of the mindset, well, the more agents that I have, the more money I'll make. Where in essence, that's not typically the case. You're probably going to find that Parento's law, the 80-20 rule, applies here, and you're going to find that probably 20% of your agents are producing 80% of your income. And at the end of the day, the other people are just providing a possible liability. Because anything the agents do that are under that umbrella of the brokerage, the broker is held responsible for in the form of lawsuits or whatever else may happen. But what's irritating me, and I'm going to get Patty's insight on this for sure, is some of the agents we're dealing with, it's like they've had zero education whatsoever, and they're making mistakes that I, as a person, really want to help them and train them and teach them how to do things properly. But then in my ear, I've got certain people saying it's not my job to educate other agents. That's their broker's job. Patty?
Yeah. If I could just go back just to make sure our facts are correct on here. There's probably about 100 agents back in 2006. In 2016, 2016, we're at about 250. And as a result of COVID, and on the other side, we've over doubled that now. So those are about the stats. Just if anyone's going to fact check, just to give the accurate numbers here. With regards to, your question about agents just not being trained and wanting to help them.
The new agents.
The new agents, absolutely. There is a basic requirement, as there is in any industry. I used to have a nursing industry. There was the basic requirement for me to get my nursing license, and everything over and above was my responsibility to learn. It's no different than in the real estate industry. We find, and here's where the struggle is from my perspective, my point of view. I am servicing my client, And when I have a new agent on the other side that doesn't know what they're doing, and I have no choice but as to educate them, if not, this is going to, I may lose a sale for my client. You have no choice but as to provide a little bit of guidance and education and training. I just went through this last night where I've received an amendment that has not been done correctly by a new agent, and I've had to rewrite it.
Tell us what the error was. It was so stupid.
Yes. On an amendment, you have to reference the date of the agreement. The date of the agreement is the original purchase and sale date. Now, it's not a big deal. However, when these offers and files get onto the lawyer's desks, these errors could end up creating problems. And sometimes...
Well, it is a huge deal, because if I have a purchase and sale agreement, hypothetically speaking, dated September 1st, 2024, and your amendment is saying this is in reference to a purchase and sale dated September 30th, that amendment in itself is invalid. So if I go to close as a homeowner and I'm saying, well, the purchaser, the purchaser's agent says the purchasers have changed their mind, first thing my lawyer is going to do is say, show me the paperwork. I show the lawyer the paperwork, and he says it's an invalid contract because your amendment's referencing to a document or a purchase and sale doesn't exist. So it is a huge deal. When things go wrong, everything, as long as you have a purchaser that wants to purchase and a seller that wants to sell, you're never going to have any issues. But there's been instances, many instances, where buyers get seller's remorse. They send their documents over to the lawyer. The lawyer says, this document's not valid. Snooze, you lose. Too bad. We're walking away, and you should have read your documents.
Or I don't have that sale agreement that you have referenced on this date. I have an old one dated this. So you guys need to get things in order. I actually had to reinsert a clause to rebind the contract because everything has now passed the deadlines on top of correcting the original amendment. So little things like that, it's in the best interest of my seller that I go ahead and make some of these corrections and educate and provide the clauses to this new agent. Again, it can get frustrating. We are supposed to all be servicing, though, the public and our clients. And at the end of the day, I just try to make that my focus and objective.
So if you are a new agent, step out of your brokerage and seek other training, because a lot of the brokerages do not really have a level of training that they should have. They'll plug you into their branded systems that come from headquarters in British Columbia or Toronto or Montreal.
Or the States.
But you should really take it upon yourself to earn extra credentials and continue to educate yourself, whether you've been in this business for a year or 50 years. From a purchaser's standpoint, make sure you're using someone experienced. In my opinion, you should be using an expert, which we've defined in the past on this show, someone that's done 1,000 transactions, that has 10,000 hours of experience, and now you've got yourself an expert. As far as the contracts are concerned, it absolutely matters that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, because down the road, if you have a buyer or seller that wants to change their mind or alter the agreement, the first thing they're going to do is look at those agreements to see that they're bulletproof. Some brokerages will audit their agreements. Sometimes lawyers will audit the agreements on behalf of the buyer or the seller, but it's really important that those agreements are absolutely bulletproof.
I agree.
So that's where you're going to do a bit of your training to make sure that's good. You had an interesting situation where you were selling a high-end luxury property that was blacklisted by a number of insurance companies on the island, Patty. Tell us why they needed insurance and why they wouldn't insure your luxury country estate.
We'll just call it a nice little castle that I had on the market. Unfortunately, the insurance companies will not touch this property. I have no idea why they will not. I can't get any information back, or couldn't get any information back. To this day, I still don't know. Insurance is so important. Everything else was able to be removed. Home inspection, financing was able to be removed. But when the lender found out that there is no possibility that insurance can be obtained for this property, the lender pulled their financing because property insurance is a requirement as part of the mortgage instructions for financing. And at time of closing, if there's no insurance certificate on the lawyer's desk stating that there is insurance on this property effective as of the day of closing, the lawyer will not be able to proceed with closing because they cannot comply and follow all the mortgage instruction requirements.
So just to clarify, insurance is not required to purchase a property. Insurance may or may not, most likely will be a condition of obtaining a mortgage for a property. So you need to make sure that property is insurable. In this particular case, I would suspect this house has structural issues, whatever the case may be. It has a river flowing through the basement.
No.
And that's why you called it waterfront.
No, I did not.
So the best thing the vendor can do in this case is probably go out and find an insurance company that's willing to insure the property.
Yeah.
Blind man insurance.
Yeah, it's just something we've had to arrest that property. Not sure what to do with it. The seller can go ahead and figure that out.
Now you have a list of stuff to talk about on your iPhone, your best friend. What did you want to cover?
Well, one thing that I wanted to just address, so when people so there's a property on the market and it's got a for sale sign on it, which clearly presents the fact that this seller wants to sell the property. When it's a rural property, and technically, would you say, Michael, if there's a for sale sign on a property, that gives you the right to go and walk the property without consulting anybody?
Absolutely. In fact, I could even just walk through the front door without any notice.
Yeah, the answer is no. You do not have the right, or
You're talking about land.
I'm talking about any property.
Okay.
And a property with a structure is what I'm actually referencing right now. So and I've had properties that have had houses on them, and I've had my sellers contact me and say, there's people in my backyard, Patty. So I, would just tell them, well, just open up the window and let them know that you're going to have to call the police if they don't get off the property because they're trespassing. So this particular situation that I want to point out, this is a rural property. It is waterfront, and the clients, and I mean, there is technology here on PEI, so we do have cameras on our properties and homes. This property does have cameras watching the outside of the property. In the last week or so, there's been about 4 vehicles that have taken the liberty because they didn't want to park their vehicle out on the road and walk back. This is an acreage property, and walk back to the waterfront. They have not booked an appointment with an agent or anything. And separate parties, these are all separate incidences where they have driven across this property to see if they could shortcut and not have to walk. Now, the weather's been absolutely beautiful, so I don't understand this. They drove over the septic field. 4 different parties have all driven over the septic field, which is it's bad. They could collapse it. They could crush this. They could damage it. The seller would have no idea that this has happened until their system fault ended up when as part of a septic inspection, you've got a cracked tank, or your water test is bad. And so do not drive over these properties. You do not know where the septic fields are and the septic tanks. You don't have the right to be trespassing. And our seller clients they're getting really frustrated. They don't even know if they want a for sale sign on this property now, so that people don't feel they have the right and the liberty to just go and drive over their property.
I have seen instances where vendors will mark where the septic field is and the septic tank so people don't drive over them. But having said that, they shouldn't be driving across the property anyway, because even if they aren't driving over those entities, they could be damaging the property or putting grooves in the lawn, and, landscaping is required and all that sort of stuff. So don't do it. Specifically, if you don't have permission to do so. And if you do want to see the property and you do want to use a vehicle to traverse it, maybe your agent should be the one taking their vehicle across the property, assuming they know it better than somebody that's just driving by. I'm going to cover one other thing and then we'll pass it back to your list if that's okay.
Fair is fair. Go right ahead.
And if it's not, you can get out of the truck. I had an offer come in. They wanted to close in 3 weeks. They said they wanted a survey done. and they also wanted a building permit. Do you find anything wrong with this master plan, Patty?
Virtually impossible.
This is not an offer written in reality. There's no way, or let me put it this way, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to get a surveyor to survey a property, any property, within 3 weeks. And it's also extremely unlikely you're ever going to get a building permit within 3 weeks. I'm waiting for one now. We're into month number 4. And this is just a simple little quarter-acre lot. So what happened in this particular instance, because the purchaser thinks they're geniuses working with another agent, the agent said, I'm going to go out and mark the pins. Why do you say, oh?
Well, so this is the buyer's agent going out to mark pins?
He's going to save them a ton of money. He's going to do this the next day, so he's going to give them great service, and he's going to go out there and find those pins with his metal detector. Maybe even find a couple of watches, some pop bottles, and a couple spoons.
So he's taking full responsibility and liability.
His brokerage is
to make the assumption that that pin is actually in its right location, because I know covered this on previous episodes. It has not been uncommon for a survey marker to be picked up, someone to just so they wanted to cut the grass around it and replop it back down where they thought it came from.
Or they'll move the pins because they're selling the lot and the purchaser wants it to be bigger or extend more in one direction, so they pick up the pin and move it and say, well, there you go. The only people that should ever be moving pins is surveyors. And just because there's pins there doesn't mean they're valid or they're in the right position. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Can you imagine somebody buying this lot? The agent said, well, this is the pins and this is where they are. So they build a 5,000 square foot, $4 million house on the water only to find out it's on the wrong lot.
Yeah.
And this has happened numerous times on the island. We've even had people buy lots that were in the opposite end of the street. So surveyor needs to survey the property. Agents aren't surveyors, and metal detectors are fun, but they shouldn't be used for this sort of stuff, in my opinion. But I hope your opinion.
Yes, no, I agree.
With reference to building permits, this particular case, the agent, again, being very helpful, called Access PEI, which is the entity on the island, the building permits division that offers building permits. And they said, well, it was an approved lot back in 1980. So the purchaser just assumed, well, that's good. It was a buildable lot back in 1980. So the regulations in 1980, here we are 44 years later, are they applicable today?
No.
So can I build my 4,000 to 5,000 square foot home on the wrong lot now that I have the Access PEI telling me that it's an approved lot?
No.
Proof for what?
Well, exactly. I've had approved lots from the 70s, 80s, and they've changed the requirements, the setbacks, and the lots are deemed unbuildable.
And there's even been cases, and I remember studying this with one of my law cases, where the government actually gave them a letter that said, yeah, you can build your 4,000 to 5,000 square foot home right there. Yeah, you're good to go. It's approved. Here's a letter from the government. Only to find out later, when they go to build, the government said, oops, we made a mistake. Good luck suing the government.
Yeah, or they'll just say, not sure who approved this. We can't find that person because they don't work here anymore. Not sure how this went through. We're going to have to take a look into this and see what we're going to do with it. And we're talking years later.
And the other thing they're doing now is they're saying things are different post-Fiona. The property that we walked yesterday, which took us hours, the vendor was actually delighted by the fact that he now had these beautiful white sand dunes, which were a product of Fiona, which he didn't have before. So the island has been altered. So when you alter a landmass, you also alter what potential building permits you can get as well. What else do we have?
An interesting conversation we had with a lawyer this week, because we had a closing and there was a fireplace, an electric fireplace on the wall. And unfortunately, so if you're a buyer or a buyer's agent, just as one example, you assume this electric fireplace is a fixture on on the wall. So therefore, at closing, when you come and do your final walkthrough, that it would be there. Now, electric fireplaces aren't, a huge cost and expense, but it is a disappointment for sure for that day. So the lawyer's going back and forth with regards to this. What the lawyer had said, which, is a really good, rule of thumb, is if you turn the house upside down and shake it, what falls off the walls or what falls down, because anything that falls off is not considered a fixture.
I'm confused.
Turn a house upside down, Michael, and give it a shake. If that fireplace was just sitting on screws on the wall, it would have fallen off.
Wouldn't? Because I fastened it right into the
then that's a
the
fixture.
2x4s behind it.
That's what we're talking about. Then, therefore, that's a fixture and it's to be included. So lawyer just made this, and again, it was a cute thing, and I thought, you know what, it's worthy of, you turn a house upside down, give it a shake, whatever falls off the walls are not considered fixtures. Whatever stays on is considered a fixture because it's secured to the home. We do not know if this electric fireplace, because the sellers are not disclosing if it was on a bracket or how this fireplace was mounted. They just left 4 screws on the wall. So we're not sure, can't be disputed. Buyers are just going to go out there and get themselves a new electric fireplace.
What should the purchaser's agent have done in the purchase and sale?
Included it, not to assume it's a fixture at the very least. And yes, this goes back to, again, the buyer's agent making sure that they've dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's. They made an assumption on something that has cost their clients maybe $300 to $500.
The purchase and sale has a paragraph which spells out what's included with the property, and then there's a little space in there where you can put additional stuff. It's imperative that you include, rather within that paragraph or on a separate sheet that you amend the purchase and sale, that you explicitly point out exactly what's included with the property, and do it to the nth degree. If it's an orange lawnmower with 91 hours on it and the model number is MB123, I would even take a picture of it, include that description with it. The other thing I run across, I don't know about you, is people will see, well, dishwasher's included, the washer dryer's included, and the Jeep in the backyard is included on the cut sheet. So they just assume that since it was on the cut sheet, that it's included.
Yes, and we have covered that, but that you cannot make that assumption.
And it's not part of the contract.
Correct.
Some people argue, well, if it's a full price offer, that stuff's included. But I'm always a big believer in 2 things. Disclose, 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 and document, document, document. And then there's nothing that's unclear. Everything I do, and sometimes this annoys some agents, I document, I have it all signed off or initialed that these statements have been made, this stuff's included, this stuff's not included. We don't want terms like purchase and sale. You'll see sometimes they say, well, we want everything but the personal belongings.
Yes.
Legally undefinitive doesn't mean anything.
You could end up with an empty house because they could consider everything in there personal to them.
Right. Next, I'm watching the hot sheet. We have a hot sheet that comes out daily. It's generated in real time that shows us new sales and stuff like that, new listings. And I find it really funny to see that, oh, that house is up for sale again. They just bought it 2 years ago. The reason it's up for sale 2 years later is because these houses are being purchased in areas that look great and wonderful, and the sun is shining every day, and there's a rainbow every afternoon, and there's a boardwalk and restaurants and tourists and sailboats, and I can go down to the wharf and pick a lobster right off the fishing boat. But then they find October comes and they're only one left there.
Yes, there are communities like that on the island.
So keep that in mind when you're buying. The makeup of the island will be different when it's not tourist season. And the other thing I would keep in mind is that beautiful drive to somewhere that's 20 minutes outside town to Charlottetown could turn into an hour and a half in a snowstorm or an ice storm.
Yes, during bad weather, Absolutely. You'll feel isolated, the extra additional time to get in and out of whatever the local community to that where you're residing is can be very isolating, can be very lonely, can be very frustrating. We typically see those come this spring with the for sale sign on because they're saying, I'm moving into town. I don't want to live out here anymore.
Keep in mind your travel time. Also keep in mind if you're moving to a very touristy area such as North Rustico, Cavendish, these areas are pretty lonely in the winter. If you like that, great. If you don't, you might want to move somewhere else. On to your phone.
Onto my phone. One thing I just wanted to let, if you're a seller or looking to sell your property, please look at your photos. And if you don't know what you're looking for, I just thought it would be worthwhile. We provide a little bit of insight so that you can maybe audit your photos, not saying to switch your agent out, but maybe you could help educate them and just say, these are the things that, I've learned from the Michael and Patty show that shouldn't probably, how my photos shouldn't look. Could you fix them or get a professional photographer out there to do these photos? On our MLS system, we do not, because they don't, and you can explain this if you want, Michael, we need to take horizontal photos. The vertical photos do not share well against various platforms. They end up with black framed kind of boxes on the side. The pictures end up even smaller.
Just won't accept the portrait photos. It would just accept the landscape ones.
So they have to be horizontal. So sellers, you want to provide your photos to the listing agent and say, here, I love this, my tree in this time of year. And it's a vertical. You're doing yourself a disservice. I've had clients insist that they wanted their Christmas tree picture because they felt their home showed so well at Christmas with all the beautiful lights. And one, it is out of sync with the rest of the photos. So it is very clear and it stands out like a sore thumb that, this is a seller's personal photo that they feel is going to help sell the photo, help sell the property. Buyers are not tricked by that. They're not going to get all warm fuzzy. What they want is a polished, professional looking presentation of your home, which professional photography will do. Surveillance camera looking images. So if you are looking at a picture and it looks like the camera was up on the ceiling looking down at the room, unless it's because it's an open loft area looking down, those can be okay because it kind of shows the whole floor plan. But we're talking it's a room and it looks like it's a surveillance camera. It does not look good. It just sends off a negative feeling. It makes the room look odd. It doesn't give you the experience that you're looking for. And it does. It feels like a surveillance camera image. There are photos that I've seen on the MLS just in this last week where, unfortunately, it looks like whoever took the photos had one leg longer than the other. We have so many apps and programs out there that will correct that. So if it looks like your house, the island is still, we're not rocking, doesn't look like we're on a boat. That's not what it feels like. So your photos shouldn't look like that either. These photos, I felt like one time it was in one angle and then the next one was in another angle. It felt like this house was structurally unsound. It was crooked. Make sure your pictures are leveled. Make sure that you don't have surveillance camera photos. Have the theme, they're consistent, the same camera, the same photographer throughout so that it doesn't give you a choppy experience of the property because these things can cost you money, create a negative experience for the buyer, and they're going on to the next property.
Or they're going to take a lot longer to sell when you have an NBA basketball player taking the photos from 8 feet off the floor. Photos should be 11 to 13 inches above the largest surface in the room.
Yes, and the one photo that I'm just going to mention was of a wall because these people had a nice little setup with a shelf on it. Whether the shelf was included, I don't know, but it was just a wall with the shelf in the middle.
Well, we could go on for hours or days. I mean, there's websites out there that do nothing but display bad real estate agent photos. In fact, I had one myself many, many years ago that was quite entertaining, and it was in every market. I looked at a property there a few weeks ago, and he ended up listing with some buddy. So I just had to see the photos. We had some great photos of the garbage cans and the compost can. We had a great photo of his vehicle in the driveway. But the one thing that was overly entertaining, which I don't usually see with crappy photos, is he would have a photo of, say, the kitchen table, and then the agent moved a quarter of a fraction of a millimeter. So then you had another photo of the kitchen table from 1 millimeter over. Then he moved over another millimeter, and there was a third photo of the same table, like he had duplicates of multiple shoots done obviously with like an iPhone 2 or something. Moving along.
Yes, and that's the other thing. Make sure that you're not in the photo in the mirror taking the photo.
I don't know if you ever saw it years ago. There was a picture, and the agent takes the photo, and there's grandma standing in the door looking out to the backyard.
Oh.
Should have just put some wheels under her, just moved her away from whatever picture he was taking.
Yeah, be mindful. Look at your photos if you are selling your property. Don't look at them as, oh, look, our place is out there and it's visible to the world. Look at it as a buyer. If I'm looking at these photos, would I buy this property? Does this make me feel excited? The best compliment that we had gotten on a property, Michael, is when our seller went through the photos based on us putting it out there on social media and across various platforms. And the wife ended up saying she was looking at the photo the one night because it was about 3 days after it went live. And obviously sellers are busy and they just trust that their agent's looking after everything. She came across this post, started going through the photos, and she went, oh my gosh, this place is so nice. Wait a minute. As she's going through them, this place looks familiar. And then ended up calling her husband over going, you should see these photos. She was so impressed, didn't recognize her house at first, but said she was really, really impressed with the photo qualities.
But we're probably far more nitpicky over photos because we're both professionally trained photographers. So it doesn't take more than a fraction of a millisecond to look at a photo to realize it just hasn't been framed properly or showing the wrong thing. Moving on, you had another interesting story with an agent that thinks he's incredible. He's, in his own mind, he's the top agent on the planet. And he sent you an offer, and it was open until a certain time. Now, when we rate an offer, that offer is open to a certain date and time. Well, this offer was open to a certain date and time, and he told Patty, he said, this was open until this time. This is more than enough time to respond to this offer. Why haven't I gotten a response? And I'm laughing when I hear this story because I'm thinking, this agent never even called you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Never asked you, is the vendor in the hospital? Is he on a cruise? Is he alive? Is he moose hunting? Is something tragic happened in his house that he's unable to respond? When should I leave this offer open to? Because not only is he sabotaging his purchaser's ability to buy this property, but the vendor may look at this and say, why is this agent trying to shove this offer at my rear end with only a few hours to respond? Came out of nowhere, plus it's a lowball offer. So what do you tell the purchaser's agents to do before they put that date and that time that offer is valid until, and do they have to respond by that date and time?
When you're looking to represent a buyer putting in an offer, there should be communication between the two agents. No, there was no communication between myself and this other agent with regards to any details of the offer, let alone how long should I leave this offer open. I could be unavailable for a period of time. So not to just assume, here's an offer, you've got 12 hours or 24 hours to respond, and it's black and white, it's in stone. The second part of all of this is the offer, yes, is open. So all you buyers listening that are submitting an offer, and let's say you've left the offer open until Monday at 6 p.m., that offer is open for the seller to accept the offer by 6 p.m. on Monday. That does not mean that they can't counter that offer on Wednesday, because in the counter, like we were discussing on this amendment, you just have to reference the date of the agreement of purchase and sale, and by both parties signing this counter, should they decide to enter into a contract agreement, has made that contract now valid. You do not have to counter. You do not have to respond within the time periods. It is good practice to say, here's the situation, which I did do with this agent. I said my client has a list of things that they need to do. They weren't going to drop their life because they had this offer on the table. Yes, you would think, well, if you put your property on the market, you should be expecting to receive an offer and make some time for it. You know, my client, he's a pretty laid back guy. He will respond when he's ready. And again, it's a lowball offer. So I apologize if he is not going to be jumping through hoops to quick and give you an answer because he's not accepting it anyways.
Once an offer expires, if I decide to accept it, is that offer still in force or do I have to rebind it? And if I have to rebind it, can you explain what that means?
Are you just referring to if I counter this offer?
You write an offer. It's open till tonight at 9 o'clock.
Correct.
I say it's a great offer. Patty writes the most beautiful offers I've ever seen in the world. They're almost Trump-like. And I accept it at 9:05. Do I have to bind the offer? Yes. You have to rebind the offer. The offer is expired.
It expired at 9.
But it doesn't mean it's dead from the purchaser's standpoint. But if the vendor agrees to accept it and they rebind the contract to the form of an amendment, and then the purchaser signs that amendment, it's still valid. So it's not the end of the world.
Yes. Or you could you not do a counter with the clause stating that
we're not doing a counter, we're just accepting the offer. That was
an offer, and no, I understand that.
It's perfect.
You want to accept it, so you're going to accept the offer, but then provide an amendment accompanying the accepted offer that both parties have to re-sign to reinstate it. Is that the process?
I'm supplying an amendment that rebinds the contract. That's correct.
Okay.
The only other way I could do that would be
because I have a different way.
Which is what I wouldn't want to do is you could change the open until time and get them to initial it. But then you're sitting around wondering if they're going to initial it. I don't like that. What's your other way?
Well, it's doing that, but not actually altering the original contract. You could just counter and say the contract agreement is open for acceptance until, and give yourself an extra hour or an extra 24 hours. Your client signs it. It's respectful of the buyer's time as well, because we can't expect them to be able to drop everything and sign it. So if you just left it open until the next day, the seller signs it immediately, submits it back. Whenever the buyer's agent is able to receive that, have it signed by the next day, resubmit it. And now you've got a binded contract. And then when the deposit is submitted, now it is a binded agreement.
Is there anything else on your list?
No, I think we've covered.
That's it? We could have one more. I think that's it.
I think that's it. I think we've covered everything.
One more till the next show. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. It's greatly appreciated. We've received nothing but positive feedback, both over the phone, text, and email, except for one guy. And I just want to address this one guy that's probably living in the basement with his mother playing Xbox all day. Is if you have any negative, non-constructive comments about the show, we would love to hear some positive, constructive comments as far as what you'd like to see with reference to Prince Edward Island or PEI real estate to make the show more enjoyable for you and everybody else. We're always looking for feedback, but if we don't get any feedback and we get a negative comment, which you do get on YouTube, you get them on podcasts and everything else, at least give us some constructive comments so we can make this show better. So more people will listen to it. We can provide a better public service.
Yes, because we're only human, and we can only do as well as our expertise. We draw from our experience. But I'm a student of life, and I would love to learn. If someone has some input and maybe a topic that they'd like to cover or something that we need to go back and correct, I'm totally open to make sure. That's why I went back and made sure our facts were correct with regards to agents, licensing. We want to make sure we're providing you correct factual data and information.
Very good. So that's it for this show. Be sure to give us some feedback, subscribe, or follow the podcast on whatever platform you choose to use. Have a great day. Patty, anything you wanted to add before we shut it down?
No, have a great day.
Bye-bye.